riding of West Vancouver-Sea to Skye will see an open race this election. It's long been a BC Liberal stronghold, but the incumbent MLA, Jordan Sturdy of BC United, is not running for re-election. Neither is anybody. Well, BC United is no longer a thing as well. And running for the BC Conservatives is Yuri Fulmer, who is the Chancellor of Capilano University. Running for the BC Green Party is Jeremy Valeriote, an environmental engineer. He ran in 2020 and narrowly lost to Sturdy. Both of them join us in studio this morning. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
And joining us on the line is Jen Ford, a former Whistler councillor who is running for the BC NDP. Good morning to you, Jen.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us, all three of you. Jen, I want to start by talking about LNG. The BC NDP has invested in new LNG products over the past 7 years, including the controversial wood fiber LNG being built in this riding. And the common critique is that how is it possible to meet your own government's emissions targets when you keep green lighting new LNG projects? How do you answer that question?
That's a tough one to answer. The wood fiber LNG and Fortis projects in Squamish have been incredibly challenging for the community. It's definitely something that I have tried to learn more about. I'm listening to the community. The concerns are very, very divided. There are people who are concerned about yes, of course, meeting our emission targets. That's why we are, the BC NDP is committed to making big polluters pay with a different carbon tax, a different form of the carbon tax, and certainly an emissions cap that will hold these producers to account. The Environmental Assessment Office and certificate were issued through very strict criteria. And this has been a long time that this community has been grappling with this project. It is challenging, but I do believe that we are on the right path.
All right, Jeremy, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Jen's correct when she says the challenge is the community. Most of the community doesn't want this, as evidenced by their elected council who have rejected 2 permits to do with this project. Mm-hmm. One thing that people aren't divided on is the potential health impacts, not only from climate change and smoke and wildfires, but also the toxic emissions from the flare stacks for this project, along with the subsidies that we're handing out. This was as we talked about before, this was a BC Liberal project. They really wanted LNG to happen. It might have worked 10 years ago, but this project sat on the shelf for years, probably partly because it's not economic. And so where are the benefits going to be? We're subsidizing this thing with taxpayer dollars to the tune of $2 billion. Mm-hmm. And is the community going to see the benefits? Not really. There are not that many jobs associated with this, and there are a lot of negative health impacts.
Sure, but I mean, this is, the investments have already been made. The projects are already underway. In some cases functioning or very close to functioning. What would you do? Just shut them down?
This project isn't even half built. It is an industry of the past. It's a sunset industry. We're going to be left with a stranded asset, and so why, instead of subsidizing
you would cancel it? Then.
Yes, we would revoke the permits, cancel it, and put something that is part of the new green economy onto that site. It's an industrial site that could be used for many other things besides exporting our gas to overseas.
And what are the sunk costs already? Do you happen to know?
I don't have that. I'm sure that's proprietary information, but I know that as of a few months ago, they were still carting contaminated soil off that site. So construction is midway. A lot of construction is taking place offshore.
But what about the BC government investment, the taxpayer-funded investment?
Well, I mean, then we wouldn't have to subsidize the project to the tune of $2 billion. We could use that $2 billion on many other things, on clean energy projects, on healthcare, on education.
But it would mean reneging on a commitment to the proponent.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sure compensation would be paid. I think the taxpayer would come out on top if this was canceled.
Yuri, there's a quote from something that you told a local newspaper in your riding. You said that the support the development of BC LNG sector to promote economic growth, advance reconciliation with Indigenous communities, and help fight climate change globally. How does expanding LNG do any of those things?
Well, I think it does a few of those things. So one, the Squamish Nation are a proponent of the project. So the Squamish Nation voted over multiple chiefs in council to approve the project. They approved it with 29 environmental conditions, all of which Wood Fibre and Fortis have agreed to meet. They're an economic participant in the success of the project. So I mean, we're really inserting ourselves above the traditional stewards of these lands. The Squamish have been on these nations for millennia. And they believe that it's the right project for their community and the right project for this time. So, I'm loath to insert my view over the traditional stewards of the land who also see an economic benefit here. I think we also have to remember that in British Columbia, 2/3 of our heat is generated by natural gas. So for us to say that, natural gas shouldn't be exported, but we should use it ourselves, also seems a little bit disingenuous. I mean, British Columbia is entirely dependent on generating heat from natural gas. So I'm not sure why we think it's okay for us, but it's not okay to export. And the places we're exporting to are burning coal.
Well, exactly. And there's just a new study that's just come out of Cornell University, a researcher by the name of Robert Howarth, a very heavily peer-reviewed research paper because he knew how controversial it would be and how much the oil and gas company would fight back against it. But it's a study that shows that exported gas produces far worse emissions overall than burning coal.
I think that's a controversial argument. It's certainly not unanimously agreed by anybody. And if you look at the international energy world, they would disagree with that.
Can you point to any evidence that says exporting natural gas reduces emissions from coal?
I can't give it to you on the spot, but there certainly is that evidence out there. I mean,
We keep hearing it anecdotally, but I don't know that anybody has ever compiled any numbers that we can see.
I can't speak to that.
Peer-reviewed science is not controversial, and unlike John Rustad and the Conservatives would have you believe. Stephen, I just want to talk about the Squamish Nation piece. When a provincial government and a company come to the Squamish Nation and say, this is going to happen whether you like it or not, we will put $1 billion on the table in cash and contracts, and by the way, we'll give you back 422 hectares of land that you have rights entitled to. We should be partnering with the Squamish Nation on the energy, on the economy of the future, on clean energy, not putting them in this position. We need to be partnering with them.
Is there not an economic advantage for the Squamish Nation here?
Undoubtedly, but there are other economic advantages that don't compromise their stewardship of the land that they believe strongly.
But you're imposing your judgment on that. You're basically saying the Squamish Nation were bribed to come to an outcome that differs with what you think, Jeremy. I think part of reconciliation is certainly encouraging Indigenous communities to have autonomy and decision authority, and they've done it in this instance.
Economic reconciliation is only one part of it. What about social and cultural reconciliation?
And I am very aware that Jen is not with us in the studio, and so I'm going to have to jump in on her behalf because she can't do it on her own here. Jen, your response.
Oh, I can certainly speak for myself, and absolutely the commitment that the BC NDP have made through the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act must be honored. These partnerships must be recognized. But we also have to go back and remember that a government that John Rustad was involved in, was absolutely a part of, the BC Liberals approved this project. The federal government approved this project. The Squamish Nation, yes, they were a proponent and they did approve this project. That's suggesting for Jeremy to suggest that these projects can just be canceled. There is so many challenges to that. We don't take that lightly. We don't take those legal contracts lightly. We wouldn't want a government that just backs out of legal contracts. That's not a world that I want to live in.
I agree with Jen Ford on that. We don't want to be the province that tells the world that the government will rip up contracts with the private sector.
Jeremy, last comment?
Projects get canceled all the time, especially when they're out of step with the rest of the economy. We're decarbonizing and transitioning our economy. This was approved in 2015. A lot has changed since then. We've seen fires and floods, and we've seen the negative impacts. We also know much more about the health impacts than we did back when it was permitted.
I want to get onto another topic briefly, and Jen, that's the NDP transportation promise. The list is lengthy. Most of the promises, though, seem to be for other regions of Greater Vancouver rather than the Sea to Sky country. The replacement of the George Massey Tunnel, the Patella Bridge, Sarita Langley SkyTrain expansion, the list goes on. What would the BC NDP do to improve transportation in your riding?
Yeah, so I've been the chair of the regional district, the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, for the last 5 years, and I've been on the Transportation Committee, which has advocated to the province numerous times that a regional transit system, once we lost the Greyhound and intercommunity transit between Pemberton, Whistler, Squamish, and the Lower Mainland, we really lost mobility of our residents. People are unable to access healthcare in the Lower Mainland. They're unable to access jobs and other essential services throughout the corridor. We also see a growing interest in the sea to sky. We have one of the fastest growing communities in the province, and not having intercommunity transit has been a challenge for us for many
And
years.
so what's the
We've
solution then,
advocated
Jen?
Yeah, the solution is a regional transit system. And if you go to our platform, it is speaking to express buses, intercommunity buses that will serve the corridor, along with other communities around the province. But that commitment is in our platform. We are committed to it. We've got a financial plan for it. We've got a business case for it, and we will deliver it.
And Yuri, do the Conservatives have a plan to make the Sea to Sky region easier to get around?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly the same plan as Jen. We need to get a bus service running to connect these communities for environmental reasons, for safety reasons, for social and economic reasons. We need to do this. I think the challenge is the NDP's been planning it for 7 years and hasn't managed to do anything about it. Notwithstanding, Jen claims that she's been pushing for it. Absolutely nothing's been delivered. The Sea to Sky has become a forgotten corridor. And the current government has done absolutely nothing to advance transportation for these folks that work up and down the corridor. Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, 75% of the people in Pemberton work in Whistler. Half of Squamish works in Whistler, and they have to get behind the windscreen of a single occupant vehicle every day on a treacherous road, putting their lives at risk. It's environmentally unsound, and we need to solve for this, and we need to solve it quick.
And Jeremy?
Yeah, for at least the second election in a row, we have all three candidates saying we're going to do this. But we've had MLAs in government, we've had MLAs out of government. Nobody's actually been able to make it happen. We know that we've needed it at least since the 2010 Olympics when we had it briefly. Nobody's suggesting it's not a good idea, but yeah, why have we been forgotten? It is really the Sea to Sky residents deserve better in terms of being able to get to work without having to get behind the wheel on a difficult, congested highway. It's a matter of who will push hard to make this happen. It's in our platform, hourly service. It's unquestionably needed, but the people that have been involved so far have not been able to get it done.
Right. We are going to have to leave it there this morning. Thank you both for being with us in studio. Jen, thank you so much for being with us over the line as well. Really appreciate your time, all three of you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Those candidates running in the riding of West Vancouver-Sea to Sky: Jen Ford, BC NDP candidate; Yuri Fulmer is the BC Conservative candidate; Jeremy Valeriote is the BC Green candidate.